Women are nothing but machines for producing children. It's a line that feels absurd, offensive, almost cartoonishly cruel. But those weren't the words of a troll or a broken man. That was Napoleon Bonaparte, emperor, visionary, one of the most unstoppable forces in modern history. You hear a quote like that and think, how could anyone say something so cold? But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes coldness isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's clarity. Because greatness, real world-changing greatness, has a cost. And few understood that cost, like Napoleon. See, we love the idea of powerful men. We romanticize ambition. We celebrate legacy. But we never talk about what it takes to live at that altitude. Great men don't get to be present. They don't get to linger in warmth. They are consumed. Consumed by war, by strategy, by obsession, by vision. And in that relentless pursuit of destiny, there's almost no room left for emotional caretaking, no space for coddling, no time to be tamed. Napoleon wasn't just a ruler, he was a man who loved, or at least he tried. His letters to Josephine were raw, passionate, sometimes desperate. And while he built an empire, she entertained lovers. That betrayal didn't just break his heart, it opened his eyes. Because what he realized, and what so many men eventually realize, is that not all women desire greatness. In fact, many fear it, because greatness doesn't submit. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't shrink itself into a box called relationship goals. Greatness is unstable, it's demanding, it's wild, it devours predictability. And for many women, that's not love, that's threat. So, what do they reach for instead? They reach for the safe, the soft, the manageable, the mediocre man, a man who doesn't challenge her, a man who's emotionally available because he has no greater mission, a man who won't disappear into a vision she can't follow. The mediocre man doesn't carry storms in his soul. He doesn't burn with a sense of destiny. He's there, always there, like a dog, not a lion. And that's the twist. He's not loved for what he is. He's loved for what he lacks. He lacks the danger of walking away. He lacks the depth that creates distance. He lacks the ambition that threatens to outgrow her. Napoleon understood that. And when he said what he said, women are nothing but machines for producing children, he wasn't spitting hate. He was making an observation, a brutal one. He reduced them to biology because in his world, most never rose beyond it. Most didn't understand the fire inside a man who refuses to live small. He wasn't trying to impress them. He wasn't trying to please. He wanted truth, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt. And here's what he saw over and over again. The more a man rises, the more he walks alone. Not because he wants to, but because comfort can't follow him where he's going. Look at the world around you today. We say we love excellence. We post about it. We hashtag it. But we only celebrate it when it's pretty, when it's entertaining, when it doesn't disrupt the comfort of the crowd. True greatness, it terrifies people, especially in relationships, because greatness demands more than attention. It demands space. It demands sacrifice, and most aren't willing to give that. Napoleon lived that contradiction. The same man who could move armies with a glance was reduced to begging in letters, pleading with a woman not to betray him. She did anyway. Why? Because power doesn't warm the heart the way predictability does. You can command nations, but that doesn't mean you'll keep someone's loyalty. Power can win wars, but it rarely wins emotional comfort. Women, even those standing beside great men, often choose companionship over conquest, because conquest greatness doesn't stop to ask how your day was. It doesn't pause to validate your insecurities. Now, here's the real kicker. Do you think that's changed? Modern men still fall for the same myth. They believe if they work harder, become more successful, build the empire, they'll finally be loved. But Napoleon would have laughed because he knew the truth. The more exceptional you become, the less lovable you appear to people who crave safety more than struggle. That's why so many women, even strong ones, gravitate toward men they can control. They say they want strength, but they choose comfort. A man who doesn't make waves. A man who never disappears into deep thought. A man who sacrifices nothing that can't be explained. These aren't leaders, they're orbiters. They rotate around her emotions, her timing, her needs, and that kind of man he's easy to keep. He's safe to love. But the man chasing something bigger than himself, he doesn't orbit, he ascends. And that's what makes him dangerous. Not because he's violent, but because he doesn't need her approval to keep going. And when a man doesn't need approval, he becomes terrifying. Because he's not a partner, he's a force. He's not here for routine, he's here for revolution. And most relationships today, they're built on routine. They're built on check-ins and quality time and emotional availability. But a man building legacy doesn't have time for emotional maintenance. He doesn't whisper sweet nothings. He doesn't apologize for his distance. He doesn't soften so someone else can feel secure. He becomes more than a man. And in doing so, he becomes less of a partner. Part 2. The cost of building an empire. Do you want comfort or do you want legacy? Because Napoleon knew. He lived it, he breathed it, and he paid for it in blood, in betrayal, in solitude. Most women, and let's be honest, most people choose the former. Because legacy isn't romantic. It's not cute. It's not built on dinner dates and good morning texts. It's built in silence, in war, in sacrifice. Every man who has ever poured himself into something greater than his own pleasure, a vision, a mission, a purpose, has tasted this bitter truth. You give everything, your time, your body, your mind, your very soul. And when you finally come up for air, you realize you're not applauded. You're not admired. You're resented. Why? Because your greatness holds up a mirror. And in that reflection, people see their mediocrity. Your focus becomes emotional distance. Your ambition becomes arrogance. Your silence becomes neglect. They don't see the fire that's consuming you from the inside. They don't see the pain you wrestle with at 3 a.m. They don't see the pressure of trying to build something that will outlast you. And they don't care, because what they want is comfort. They want safety. They want someone who makes them feel like the center of the universe. But men like Napoleon weren't born to orbit. They were born to lead, to forge, to dominate. And that kind of man is utterly incompatible with the emotional script modern relationships demand. He can't text back every time. He can't explain why he's distant. He can't shrink himself just to make someone else feel bigger. He doesn't hate women. He just doesn't need validation from them. That's what made Napoleon dangerous. And that's why he was punished. Not for being cruel, not for being abusive, but for refusing to kneel, to love, to tradition, to comfort. Napoleon understood what most men are terrified to accept, that what a woman says she wants is rarely what she chooses. She'll praise ambition but build a home with obedience. She'll admire strength but marry softness. She'll talk about wanting a king but settle for someone she can control. And if you think love will protect you from that truth, think again. Ask yourself, why are so many brilliant, disciplined, self-made men abandoned? Why do women leave the very men they once claimed to admire? It's not because those men were flawed. It's because love without understanding is a ticking clock. And most women, again, most people don't understand what it costs a man to walk the path of greatness. They see the result, but not the war behind it. They see the empire, but not the nights spent in self-doubt, not the years of being ridiculed, not the isolation, not the blood, not the grind. They fall in love with the outcome. But when the journey doesn't end, when he keeps going, keeps climbing, they begin to resent the very fire they once admired. Because that fire doesn't dim, it doesn't settle, it doesn't pause for love. It burns. This is why Napoleon spoke about women the way he did. He wasn't bitter. He was done with romantic idealism, not because he was incapable of love, but because love couldn't keep up with his destiny. And when a man chooses destiny over domesticity, he must also choose loneliness. That's the brutal ancient trade-off. You can build an empire, or you can build a nest. One gives you legacy, the other gives you warmth, but never both. And every man who tries to walk the middle path, he's torn apart by it. Because you can't be half present and fully great. You can't chase a calling that demands your soul and still promise someone else your consistent emotional presence. So the great man walks alone, not because he wants to, but because he outgrows what the world offers in return for his obedience. Napoleon didn't seek isolation. He was forced into it by the weight of vision. The higher a man climbs, the thinner the air becomes, and the fewer people can breathe it with him. Women want to be seen, to be heard, to be held, and they should be. But a man consumed by purpose doesn't have time to tend to the fragile needs of emotional maintenance. He is not cold by nature. He is hardened by purpose. And that's the truth modern society refuses to admit, that most people, including women, are terrified of the truly great, not because they're evil, but because they can't be owned. They can't be domesticated. You can't predict a man who serves something higher than love. So what does society do? It demonizes him, calls him toxic, says he's emotionally unavailable, says he doesn't listen. Of course he doesn't listen. He's not here to hear feelings. He's here to make history. Napoleon was demonized for many things. His ambition, his conquest, his ego. But at the heart of it, he was punished for refusing to kneel, for refusing to play along, for refusing to make his power palatable. His downfall wasn't his ambition. It was the illusion that those closest to him would ever truly understand it. And in the end, even the emperor is abandoned. Even the lion dies alone. Part 3. Choose the nest or the empire. Here's the part no one wants to admit out loud. Every man with a mission will face this question. Do you build the empire or do you build the nest? Because you can't build both, not really, not fully, not at the level that matters. You can't leave your soul on the battlefield and still come home with enough softness to give someone your undivided emotional attention. You can't stare down the abyss of greatness and still remember to ask if she's okay every time she frowns. And most women, they'll never say it, but they know. They know they can't have both either. So they choose the nest. They choose warmth. They choose predictability. And it's not evil. It's not wrong. It's human. But what's also human and far less talked about is what happens to the man who doesn't choose the nest, the man who chooses fire. He gets called cold. He gets labeled distant. He's misunderstood, exiled, ignored, not because he failed, but because he refused to bend. And society won't call it what it really is. It won't say, this man chose conquest over comfort. No, it'll say he was too much, too focused, too obsessed, too selfish, too unavailable. But it was never about selfishness. It was about service, not to a woman, not to a relationship, to something bigger, to a vision, to a purpose, to the thing that kept him awake while others slept peacefully beside partners who only wanted consistency. And in choosing that, he walks alone, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity, because very few can walk with him, not because he's superior, but because the altitude is brutal, the journey is lonely, and the silence deafening. The higher he climbs, the fewer people understand the air he breathes. They say he's hard to love, but what they really mean is he doesn't need my emotional leverage, because he doesn't pause when she cries. He doesn't fold when she doubts. He doesn't make her the axis of his world. He can love her deeply, but love is not his anchor. His mission is, and for most women, that's not romantic. It's terrifying, because it means she can't control him. She can't tether him with tears. She can't hold him hostage with affection. She can only do two things: follow or be left behind. And most don't like that gamble. So they choose a man who seems powerful on the outside. He looks like a man. He talks like a man. But inside, he's soft clay, molded by her moods, shaped by her needs, living according to her worldview. He doesn't threaten her comfort, and because of that, he doesn't threaten her at all. That's the quiet shame no one wants to discuss. It's why women settle upward in appearance, but downward in essence. They marry the man who is safe, not the one who would have made history. They love the man who listens, not the one who leads. They choose the orbit, not the fire. And here's the bitter twist. She may love him. She may stay with him. She may even build a life with him. But she will never, ever truly admire him. Because deep down, she knows. She didn't choose a king. She chose a servant who looked like one. And you the man who won't kneel. The man who still burns at 2 a.m. building something no one else can see yet. You weren't rejected because of your flaws. You were rejected for your fire, for the intensity of your soul, for the reality that being with you required her to rise, to become more, to evolve beyond comfort. And most aren't willing. They don't want to rise. They want to rest. So don't envy the mediocre man. Pity him, because though he may be loved, he will never be respected. He will never be needed in a way that shakes the soul. He will be tolerated, used, perhaps even cherished, but never truly followed, because nothing about him leads. And leadership, real masculine leadership, is not something that can be faked. It's not a performance. It's not a tone of voice. It's not confidence packaged in digestible doses. It's fire. It's obsession. It's the kind of presence that bends reality. It's the kind of vision that dares to rewrite the script instead of read from it. That kind of man, he doesn't orbit. He doesn't pause. He builds, and he bleeds for it. He is not unloving, but love is not his mission. He is not heartless, but his heart is disciplined. And that makes him unreachable for the average woman, because she's not looking to walk beside a titan. She's looking for a companion who makes her feel safe, heard, validated, prioritized, and that's fine. But don't pretend it's the same thing as loving greatness, because it's not. Part 4. Why she didn't choose you. Here's the truth you've probably felt deep down, but never had the words to say. She didn't choose you not because you weren't good enough, but because you were too much, too intense, too focused, too dangerous to her comfort. You were never rejected for your flaws. You were rejected for your fire, for the depth of your vision, for the burden of your potential, for the fact that being with you would have meant she had to evolve emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And most people, not just women, aren't ready for that. They say they want a man who's on fire, but when they feel the heat, they run. They want your greatness to stop at the point it makes them feel insecure. They want your ambition, but not the distance it creates. They want your depth, but only if it still revolves around their needs. Because to walk beside a man like you means becoming more than just a partner. It means becoming an ally in a war. Not just showing up in the photos, but standing in the mud. And most people aren't built for that. They want to be the reward, the comfort, the soft place to land. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they will never admire you for choosing them over your mission. They'll only be relieved that they won. They'll hold your heart, but not your respect. And that's where so many great men get torn apart. You sacrifice your purpose thinking it'll earn you love. You dim your light thinking it'll make you more available. You trade vision for connection. And in return, you're not admired. You're resented. Because when you kill your greatness to please someone else, they don't fall deeper in love. They lose respect. They don't say it out loud, but they feel it. Because now you orbit them, and they know it, and that's the silent tragedy of most modern relationships. Women settling downward, in essence men shrinking in presence, both afraid to admit the truth. That comfort kills greatness, and greatness disrupts comfort. So if you're wondering why she didn't stay, why she didn't admire you, why she kept choosing soft men over your fire, it's not because you were broken. It's because you were whole, too whole, and she wasn't ready to meet you at that altitude. You the man who doesn't flinch at 2 a.m., the man who stares down his own limits, the man who carries responsibility like armor and silence like scripture. You were built for something more than a cuddle and a compliment. You were built for conquest, not conquest over people, not domination over women, but conquest over yourself, over your cravings, over your loneliness, over your need to be liked or loved or approved of. Because approval, it's a leash, and you were never meant to be led. You were meant to lead. And here's the price of that. You may walk alone. You may be misunderstood. You may be feared, judged, dismissed. You may even be hated. But you will not be forgotten. Because while soft men are embraced in the moment, it's the hard ones, the relentless ones, the dangerous ones who leave a mark that time cannot erase. Statues are not built for the sweet. They're built for the unyielding. And that's what no one wants to say out loud. They'll say you're too much. They'll say you're hard to love. They'll say you're emotionally unavailable. What they won't say is that they were afraid of what you showed them about themselves. Your discipline reminded them of their distractions. Your focus exposed their fragmentation. Your mission made their comfort feel like cowardice. Great men are mirrors. They reflect everything others are not. And most people, men and women alike, cannot stand that reflection. So they try to shatter the mirror. They call you names. They question your intentions. They accuse you of being toxic. But the real toxicity is pretending your softness is what makes you safe, when really it's just what makes you forgettable. Because she may love the man who stays. She may adore the man who listens. She may thank the man who orbits. But she will never truly respect him. She will never follow him, not in her heart, because she knows he's not leading. And you were never supposed to be safe. You were supposed to be danger. The kind of danger that shakes nations, that makes mediocre men feel insecure, that forces women to choose rise with you or stay behind. And most don't rise. They rest. So stop asking why she didn't choose you. You already know. She didn't want the fire. She wanted the fireplace. She didn't want the climb. She wanted the nest. And that's not your failure. That's your freedom. Because now you get to walk forward unchained. Now you get to build without the weight of someone else's comfort. Now you get to rise not as a man shaped by love, but by purpose. So let her go. Let the myth go. Let the fantasy of being understood go. You were not built for understanding. You were built for impact. And yes, it will cost you. But if you endure, the world will never forget your name. ChatGPT.Noor. Part 5. The Fire That Cannot Be Held. Let's cut to the final core truth, the one men whisper to themselves at night, but rarely say out loud. You weren't meant to be held. You were meant to burn. Your life is not a lullaby. It's a storm. It's not a warm blanket. It's an inferno that consumes mediocrity, routine, and small dreams. You weren't built to be her comfort. You were built to be her challenge, the sharp edge she either rises to meet or walks away from. And most will walk, not because you're too cold, but because you're too hot. Too much discipline, too much obsession, too much focus, too little need for validation. See, that's the real reason she couldn't stay. Not because you didn't care, not because you didn't try, but because you didn't bend, because you didn't soften to fit her story, because you didn't orbit her moods, because you didn't trade your mission for her momentary feelings. And that terrified her, because when a man is fully sovereign, when he belongs to no one emotionally, he becomes unmanageable. He becomes impossible to manipulate. He becomes unreachable to the woman who relies on emotional leverage to feel safe. She can't cry to pull you off course. She can't guilt you into pause. She can't seduce you into surrender. And for many women, that's not romance. That's war. They say they want a man on purpose. But most aren't prepared for the silence that comes with it. The solitude, the sharpness of your mind when you're locked into vision. They want the glow, but not the heat. And when they feel the heat, they recoil. They call you names. They twist the narrative. You're selfish. You're emotionally unavailable. You just care about your goals. But what they really mean is this: you don't need me to survive. And that, to many people, is unbearable. Because when you stop making others the center of your existence, you stop giving them the illusion of control. You become something rare, something wild, something they don't know how to hold. And that's what separates you. Because you don't love from need. You love from choice. You don't connect from emptiness. You connect from abundance. You don't slow down to be adored. You keep moving, and anyone who can't match your pace simply falls away. And here's the truth that hurts, but sets you free. Most people were never meant to walk beside you. They were meant to watch you, to observe your fire, to feel your presence, to remember you long after they've returned to their smaller lives. They weren't meant to contain you. They weren't meant to be your finish line. They were a test, a checkpoint, a mirror to show you who you really are and who you refuse to become. So no, she didn't fail you, and no, you didn't lose. You just outgrew the cage she wanted to build around your fire. You outgrew the emotional script, the check-in texts, the expectation that love means access, unlimited, uninterrupted access to your time, your attention, your soul. And now you're free to walk alone, to build alone, to burn alone. And yes, it will be lonely. Yes, there will be nights when silence feels like a punishment. Yes, you will crave the softness of arms that want nothing but to hold you. But remember this: statues are not built for men who were always held. Statues are built for men who held on. To purpose, to clarity, to a standard no one else could meet. And if you stay the course, you won't need to ask who will remember you, because your life will become the answer. History remembers the lion, not the lamb, the architect, not the assistant, the one who stood unshaken, not the one who folded for affection. So when the next woman comes, and she will, don't hand her the blueprint to your soul. Let her watch. Let her earn her place in your fire. Let her rise or let her go. Because love that can't walk beside your purpose isn't love. It's a leash dressed in lipstick. And you were not built for leashes. You were built for legacy. Part 6. The final choice: comfort or immortality. Here's the end of it. The line in the sand. The truth no one teaches boys, but every man must eventually learn. You have to choose. You can have her heart, or you can have the world, but never both. You can build an empire, or you can build a nest, but the moment you try to do both fully, completely, you tear yourself in half. Because the empire demands sacrifice, and the nest demands presence. The empire wants your fire. The nest wants your warmth. And the world, it doesn't celebrate both. It doesn't reward the balanced man. It kneels to the relentless one. So you must decide, do you want to be loved in your softness or followed in your fire? Because, yes, the mediocre man will be loved. He'll be appreciated. He'll be remembered as good. But he will never be great. And you were never meant to be good. You were meant to be dangerous. Not reckless, not cruel, but untamed, unowned, unapologetically aligned with a mission that lives deeper than romance, deeper than comfort, a mission that defines who you are. And it's that danger the world still bows to, not because it's scary, but because it cannot be controlled. It cannot be tamed. It cannot be seduced. It cannot be guilted into slowing down. It moves, it builds, it consumes. And she, if she is not prepared to burn beside you, will always choose the breeze over the wildfire. She'll choose the man who pauses when she cries, who pauses his goals when she doubts, who shrinks his purpose to fit her pace. She'll choose safety over vision, and she'll convince herself she's still choosing a man. But deep down, she'll know she didn't choose a king. She chose a servant who looked like one. And here you are, still burning, still awake at 2:00 a.m. crafting, building, fighting for something no one else can see yet. And you have to know, you were never rejected for your failures. You were rejected for your discipline, for your intensity, for the unbearable weight of being a man who doesn't need someone to feel whole. Because most people can't love a man they don't control. They can admire him, they can desire him, they can fantasize about being the one who tames him, but they can't sustain him. Because being beside you means constantly feeling the gravity of your focus, the silence of your solitude, the sharpness of your mind when you're locked into purpose. It means realizing you will never orbit her. She must rise to walk beside you, and most won't. They don't want to rise. They want to rest. So let them rest. Let them have the soft man, the agreeable one, the safe one. And you keep building. You bleed for it. You burn for it. And yes, you walk alone for it. Because that's the price of sovereignty. That's the cost of becoming a man who isn't molded by the world, but who molds the world around him. And if that means dying misunderstood, then die a mystery, but die a monument. Because no woman rewrites history. No woman leads armies. No woman builds civilizations or commands the future. Men do. And they do it alone, bleeding, focused, unloved, but unstoppable. So the next time you wonder why she didn't choose you, stop. You already know. She didn't want greatness. She wanted comfort. And you, my brother, are not comfort. You are danger. And the world, it still bows to danger. So keep going. Don't ask to be seen. Don't beg to be understood. Don't dilute your flame just to be embraced by those afraid of the heat. Because the fire you carry, the one that makes you too much for most, is the very thing that will make you immortal. Let them say you were distant. Let them say you were hard. Let them say you were alone. Just make sure they also say this: he never stopped. He never knelt. He never traded greatness for affection. He burned, and the world watched, and then it bowed.